Hey everybody, this is Joel. Welcome to a new addition to the Red Rondo Show. This is the Red Rondo Women's Show. Now we are coming very close to the beginning of a new Women's Super League campaign. A lot of action going on with the Liverpool women during the summer transfer window. A lot of activity both in the dugout and on the pitch. And to talk to us through the Liverpool women, how they might be shaping up, some of the things that maybe went wrong last season, we have somebody from the halfway line who has been covering women's football for a few years now. He is the deputy editor of the halfway line. I am very pleased to have Tom Maher with us. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Joel. Thanks so much for inviting me onto the show.
So, like I said, as in any season, when you're getting ready for a new campaign, there's a lot to delve into, and especially with the Liverpool women's football team. Before we delve into how they're looking this season, I want to talk a little bit about last season. I think, by many people's estimation, a bit of a disappointment given that they seem to be progressing and peaking a little bit at the end of the 2023-24 season. From your perspective, where did things go wrong? I know it's hard to maybe pinpoint one or two things, but as best you can you summarize what went wrong in 2024-25 that was working for them the previous campaign?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was such a huge success the season before. And I think that they were almost victims of that a little bit. They broke into the top four. They finished ahead of Manchester United, which is huge, really. That really does feel like an established top four in the WSL now. Um, so almost, that overachieving and maybe not building on it as much as they could have in the off season was a difficulty. Obviously, they signed Olivia Smith, who they ended up relying on quite heavily for goals. She was their top scorer in this recent season. I mean, it's difficult to say because they were only seventh on goal difference this season. If you look at the table, you have to kind of take yourself out of the mindset of what it is as a Liverpool fan, a men's fan, because obviously nothing's good if it's not first for Liverpool men, but it's for the women's side, it has been slow progression since promotion back to the top flight about 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, I think probably that it was a little bit of a slow start. They had back-to-back draws against Leicester and West Ham, and I think a lot of people kind of felt that it was going to be 2 wins out of two from those games, and so already you're kind of 4 points off what you would have wanted from those matches. Um, and I think then, obviously, as the season kind of went on, Matt Beard, who was manager of the season before, was let go. Of course, and of course, Liverpool, when they've won the WSL, they've won it twice before in some of the earliest editions of the WSL, and Matt Beard was manager on both those occasions. So it's a big decision from Liverpool to let him go. They were really struggling at the time, but I know that there was a lot of Liverpool fans that wanted to see him stay and see him get a bit of a better chance, because he was the manager of the season, but just the season before. And then Amber Whiteley came in and she had a bit of an instant impact. She had a really brilliant FA Cup win she knocked Arsenal out of the FA Cup when she was obviously manager of Liverpool and or interim manager, which was really probably one of the highlights of their season. They also won under her 3-1 at Anfield against Manchester United, which is another big highlight. So yeah, I think maybe just obviously this season didn't have the stability that last season had. It didn't have maybe the little bit of luck you need in the WSL to get yourself on a good run and pull yourself up the table, really.
Now, one thing we were talking about before we had been bantering going into this season is that the Liverpool women seem to really be much more defensive minded under Matt Beard last season. I don't know if that was just a choice or just the quality of opponents that was against them. Do you think that was the right approach coming off a season in 2023-24 when they had some breakouts and seemed to be a team that could be on the up moving forward?
Mhm.
Was that defensive approach the right way to go for Matt Beard, in your opinion?
I think that's a really interesting point, Joel. I think I don't want to be unkind to Matt Beard because he's a fantastic manager and he's been so good in the women's game for so long. But he is a very practical manager. He doesn't play the type of style that obviously Gareth Taylor's going to play now that he's in charge. It's kind of like it's a defensive style, but with a lightning quick counter attack, and using that pace of players like Smith and Leanne Kiernan, all of those players to really make you pay. You got Fuka Nagano to kind of chop up the defense and find those through balls to those pacey players in behind. And the season before, obviously that worked really well, and they had some really good results, really impressive results. And yeah, I think the thing, what maybe you're right, John. Maybe it was kind of like a case of that Matt Beard needed to try something new, um, and try to be a bit more front-footed, because because the WSL is a far different league to the one that he lifted the trophy with in the early 2010s. You've got teams like Manchester City, Chelsea, and Arsenal who are playing a brand of football that wasn't really happening in the Super League at the time, in the Women's Super League at the time. So, maybe there is a case that he should have been a bit more front footed in his approach.
And it's going to be interesting to see how things evolve under Gareth Taylor, who is probably going to have a very different approach. Before we get to that, though, you did touch earlier about Olivia Smith and some of her contributions. Obviously, you can't talk about Liverpool summer without mentioning Olivia Smith and the big business that happened in that department. Uh, I'm kind of two mindsets with this one. On one hand, obviously, I think it's really great for the women's game to finally, can't believe it's taken this long, to finally have somebody break that $1 million barrier, something that goes back like at least 30 or 40 years to the men's game when that barrier was broken. So it's great to see that on one hand. But I want to know, I guess, from Liverpool's perspective, is this kind of I guess, first off, how does this move and that kind of money benefit Liverpool, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I mean, I think obviously the obvious thing is that they signed Olivia Smith for around 200,000 last summer, and after one season, they've earned 800,000 from that player, as well as having a great season from her. So that's like the big positive. Um, I think again we're looking at Liverpool and Arsenal, who are in different points of their development as far as women's football is concerned. Arsenal are there; they're obviously European champions now. It's that would be very hard for a player like Olivia Smith to turn down. Um, I think the obviously having that money, you want to see that money put back into the women's team, and I think as a fan of Liverpool, if you're a fan of Liverpool women, that's what you would like. And I'm just a little bit concerned that that's not quite happening. I mean, Olivia Smith signed for Liverpool, signed for Arsenal this year on the 17th of July. A day later, Liverpool signed Sam Kerr for an undisclosed fee. Raphael Borgraf on the same day from Freiburg, and later that month signed Lily Woodham on a free transfer. And there's been no more signings since then. And that does worry me, I think, and especially because the window is going to close on Thursday next week. And yeah, we'll get onto Gareth Taylor's style, but it's a heck of a style for a squad to deal with without bringing in a player who's going to kind of be the linchpin in that kind of style. But I think as far as it shows that they've been doing something right to find a player like Smith, and it gives you more confidence in signings like Kirsty McLean, who is quite a similar position to what Smith was last year. Picked up having performed really well in a European league, and an attacking player in her early 20s, similar profile. So if the scout department's working well, could be a very exciting signing for Liverpool.
So you've mentioned Kirsty McLean, which actually leads me to one of my next points, which is with Olivia Smith out of the lineup. She was obviously far and away the featured player for the Liverpool women. Who do you think, is it a Kirsty McLean that needs to step up and take on that role, or is that not necessarily a role that is going to need filling? Is there going to be maybe a different approach? Who do you think is the featured player for Liverpool right now?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, Joel, because I don't think that they can really replace the type of player that Olivia Smith is because everything kind of goes through her in so many ways. So I think, and obviously it's a different style of play that Gareth Taylor is going to implement into the side. So I think that that means that you're probably going to see players like, I think certainly the centre of midfield is going to be really important because I think that's probably the strongest area of Liverpool's team at the moment. You've got players like Marie Hobinger, who's fantastic footballer. She's got a worldie in her pocket, and I think what she does really well is she's really good at recovering loose balls. She did it 106 times more than any other Liverpool player last season. And then you've also got players like we talked about it before, but Fuka Nagano, she can pick a pass, and she's going to be so important to the way that Gareth Taylor wants to play. And you're thinking about that linchpin, she's certainly somebody who could step in and be that kind of player for Liverpool this season. And then you've got players like Kerry Holland as well, who's one of my favourite players to watch actually in the league over the last few years. I think she's just fantastic, and I think it was really difficult European Championships for Wales this summer. Obviously, they lost all their games in an incredibly tough group. But I thought she was one player who just never stops running. Had I think she set up Jess Fishlock's goal against France, and she amazingly to me she didn't score last season in the league, but already in pre-season she's looked threatening. She scored a brilliant goal against Manchester United in one of their pre-season friendlies recently. So I think the centre of midfield is going to be really important as far as goals are concerned. I'd be looking at players like Leanne Kiernan to step up. She was top scorer in the Championship when they were promoted. She's kind of had a bit of a stop and start time since then, but she works so hard. And obviously I cover a lot of Irish Ireland, and she is a fantastic player for Ireland. And I remember a piece a few years ago by a brilliant journalist in Ireland called Emma Duffy, and she just spoke to Leanne Kiernan on a lot of levels. And I always remember the fact that her father said to her when she was younger that she would make the national team when she was 18, and Leanne Kiernan proved him wrong by making the national team when she was 17. So I think she's the type of player that I'd love to see step up. I think Mia Enderby's had a good preseason as well, and then also Sophie Roman Haag is going to be important as well. She's got the potential, scored a hat-trick at the World Cup a few years ago for Norway against the Philippines. She won the most aerial duels of any player in the league, 88, which is astonishing, really. So, she's going to be a presence in the box. I think it's very difficult to replace a player like Smith, but, it's a bit of that old Moneyball thing, replacing her in the aggregate, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and that wasn't necessary. That wasn't the only player that Olivia Smith. That wasn't the only player that Arsenal plucked from Liverpool during the summer transfer window. I want to touch on another one who a very different profile, obviously, and that's Taylor Hines, who was one of the more experienced Arsenal defenders on a team that most of the players are like in their mid-20s or below, with the exception of two or three. How big of a blow is that to the Liverpool backline, seeing Taylor Hines leave to return to Arsenal?
I think it is a massive blow, to be honest. I really do. I think not only from an on the pitch perspective, but also from the leadership that she provides on and off the pitch. She was vice captain, and obviously the Liverpool's captain, Niamh Fahey, has also retired over the summer. So I don't think that Liverpool, from what I was trying to see if they'd have signed a new captain yet, but I don't think that they have. I'd be surprised if it wasn't Gemma Bonner, obviously the captain when they won the WSL, the last time they won the WSL. I think she's a huge miss, and I think she brings so much on the pitch. She brings um, just she's always committed to a challenge. She's really good going forward on the front foot. I think she put in the most crosses into the box for Liverpool last season. And when you're looking at players like Sophie Roman-Haug to step up, you need players like that who are going to be able to get into positions where they can put balls into the box. I think she's been so good and so important for what Liverpool have tried to do over the last few years in terms of building up a presence in the league, and she's been a consistent part of that. And yeah, I think she's going to be a really big miss. She pops up with goals as well now and again too. So yeah, I think it's going to be really, really difficult. She won in defensive sense. She won the most tackles, made the most interceptions, and made the most blocks of any Liverpool player in the WSL last year. So you've got to be looking to replace that in the team.
And speaking of replacing, that leads me to who I perceive is going to be the replacement for her in Gareth Taylor's setup, and that's Lily Woodham, who they recently signed. When you just look at it through, I guess, a statistic point of view, she was loaned out to Crystal Palace last season. Maybe a fan's perspective will, if they just look at the table, it's hardly necessarily a ringing endorsement and not anything that's going to get the fans buzzing when you look at the amount of goals that Crystal Palace conceded and how uncomfortable they were defensively. I think they conceded about 65 goals, I think it was, and there was like 20, at least 20 more than the next closest team. So how can you spin that into a positive, and what are maybe attributes that Liverpool fans can look forward to with her and not necessarily just look at that stat data?
Yeah, Joel, I'm hopefully going to make you feel a lot better about this one because Lily Woodham is a really I'm a big fan of hers. I think she's a fantastic footballer, and we know with teams that get relegated, you can have players who are really good players, and you know I saw her quite a few times in the league, and often in my role at the halfway line, I'm doing kind of player ratings, and even when Crystal Palace lost, I can't remember giving her less than a 6 or a 7. She's always giving that kind of consistent performance, and she's really good at pushing upfield. I covered her last season when Wales knocked Ireland out of the Euros in the playoff round, and she was brilliant in both legs. She really caused Ireland difficulties. She has a knack for running into the box at the right time and getting on the end of a ball, as well as being the one to provide it. She scored in that first leg in Cardiff, a vital goal. She's really impressed me over those 2 games, and those are 2 really important games. And obviously, she's had a great experience this summer going to the Euros with Wales. I think that's going to stand her in great stead coming into the new season, because it could be quite daunting to go to Anfield on the first day, having played much of the season last season in Sutton, and there's a big difference between those 2 grounds, I'll tell you. But I think she's really exciting. She's another player who fits the profile, like you said, of Taylor Hines. She's really good at putting balls into the box. She's really good on the front foot, good defensive, solid defensively as well. And she has that leadership aspect about her as well. When she was 22, she was given the captaincy at Reading. So that kind of shows that she's only 24 now or 25 now, and that kind of says it all about the type of leader that she is. And I'd be really happy about this signing as well, because Liverpool picked her up on a free as well. A contract was mutually terminated at Seattle Reign. So I'd be really happy about this signing if I was a Liverpool fan.
Yeah, one of the things that I think I want to touch on when it comes to some of the newcomers is one common theme I'm noticing with them is I think continuity and familiarity. I know the likes of Christy McLean and who we were talking about for Lily Woodham are in new environments, but they have familiar faces that are there. How much do you think having that continuity and familiarity for Woodham? There's her Welsh teammates Gemma Evans and Kerry Holland there. For McLean, there's the Scottish connection with Jenna Clark and Sam Kerr as well. How much is that going to help these youngsters integrate, knowing they have that familiarity on the pitch with them?
I think it's going to be really, really helpful. I think you can't underestimate it as well. Like I think moving from Scotland, as in Kirsten McLean's case, is, and coming down and having somebody who's also been there, done that, has been living in Germany for the last, well, other than when she returned for 6 months here. But, I think it's going to be huge. It's going to be really, really helpful. Um, I was even talking to Vika Captain today at the Chelsea Media Day, and she was saying how helpful it's been to have, since when she moved over to England, to have her friends like Victoria Pelova, all those type of, the Dutch players, to kind of get you settled in. So even being in Liverpool, you might have players, God forbid, that play for Everton, that you might have a nice relationship as well. I know that Courtney Brosnan and Leanne Kinnan are great friends as well, obviously from the national team. So those things can kind of help as well. And it's, yeah, like you say, especially for a young player, like Kirsty McLean, she played at Rangers with Sam Kerr as well. So they know each other very well. So yeah, I think that's going to be really helpful for them.
And now let's delve into the person who's going to be at the center, who's going to be tasked with trying to turn things around for Liverpool, and that's Gareth Taylor. Taylor comes with a good resume. I think he led Man City to the FA Cup in his first season, so he's got maybe that instant impact type of thing as well. I think it was a couple of seasons ago where Man City were lost out to Chelsea just on goal difference for the WSL title. When you look at that, it's obviously something for Liverpool fans to get excited about. But how do you rate the appointment of Gareth Taylor for the Liverpool women?
I think it's really interesting. It's a really interesting one. Firstly, I think I was a little bit disappointed that Amber Whiteley didn't get the job, because I thought she'd done enough. I thought we'd seen enough from her, but I'm really glad that she's staying on in the coaching staff. I think she's going to be assistant manager, or she has been working very closely with Gareth Taylor. She was covering pre-season, while I think they'd known at Liverpool that Gareth Taylor was going to be taking over for a while. It was just kind of some nuts and bolts of his contract at Manchester City that they needed to sort out. I think it's an ambitious appointment, because it has to be right. You've got a manager who, like you said, was goal difference away from the title, and they really should have won the title. That it's that year. I think it's really difficult to look at his time at City and kind of think about it, whether it's a success or not, because some of the football they played was magnificent. You're looking at a team that beat Barcelona last year. They're the only team in football to beat Barcelona and Chelsea last year. So that's incredibly impressive. But then, only 2 trophies in 4 years as head coach maybe is less impressive. I suppose, I think the interesting thing about this appointment is he's been at City, he's been in the City group in a managing capacity for 10 years. He was there as one of the academy managers before he took over the women's head coach role. And of course, obviously, he was a footballer himself. He played for Manchester City and had a 15 caps for Wales. So that's another element that hopefully could help those Welsh players settle in too, or Lily Woodham to settle in. But I think the big thing with him is it's coming back to that style of play, isn't it? Because he doesn't play in a defensive style of play. He plays a very City group, possession-based, front-footed football. And so I think at the very least, it's going to be an adjustment period for the team. And we're already seeing that in the preseason friendlies. They've made for some, at times, pretty grim viewing. I mean, obviously, they lost 5-1 to Aston Villa. They've lost 1-0 to Durham, lost 3-0 to West Ham, which isn't brilliant. The kind of bright spark was that 2-2 draw with Manchester United. But obviously, even in that game, we kind of saw we saw the good and the bad of Taylor's system because the first goal that United get in that game is because Borgrafe, the new goalkeeper from Freiburg, tries to play out from the back. Simi Arujo intercepts and scores. But then you see kind of free flowing moves as well, and then this is where you try these things in preseason to try and get up to speed. I worry about. I think we mentioned this before when we were talking beforehand about his player management skills. Obviously, he had a very high profile falling out with Chloe Kelly last year at Manchester City, and I just worry a little bit if things aren't going well about his player management skills and how much he can keep them on side. I think that's one of the reasons that Liverpool fans should be really happy that Amber Whiteley's still there, because you can see how much the players respond to her. That's one of her really big strengths, I think, is how much she can kind of communicate with the players. So they could form a really dynamic duo, at Liverpool. But I think there's going to be an adjustment period for them, certainly. And they don't have much time. They've got Birmingham last preseason friendly on Sunday at St Andrews, and then it's the Merseyside derby at Anfield. It doesn't come much bigger than that to kick off the season.
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones here. Just got a few minutes left. I want to touch on one of the things I know Gareth Taylor, in addition to him making an instant impact at previous clubs, he's known for developing young players. How much do you think that is going to benefit a team that is mostly in their 20s?
I think it's going to hugely benefit them. I mean, you've got the nail on the head there. I mean, even looking back at last season when City obviously had a huge injury crisis, he was given players like Lily Murphy a chance, Gracie Pryor a chance, and Abo Fujio is a bit older, but she had a fantastic season last season, and he had a lot of faith. He put a lot of faith in her, and especially in the early parts of the season where maybe there's a few question marks over her. She wasn't getting the goals that she then was able to get a bit later in the season. And I think his faith in her was really, really big for how she was able to perform in the rest of the season. I think certainly he can have an impact with the young players, and obviously he knows Gemma Bonner quite well from his time at Man City as well. So I hope that they can have quite a good partnership as far as helping players to develop at Liverpool as well.
And just in conclusion here, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to the Liverpool women. They have a coach who I think meets a profile that definitely a lot of Liverpool fans would like to see. There's a lot of youngsters coming in to the fold. They've got all that money from the Olivia Smith thing. At the same time, it takes a lot of time for things. I think a lot of people might naturally think, okay, well, it's Gareth Taylor. It's just going to be like a quick, like from a worst to first kind of thing. I know they weren't the worst last year, but they might be expecting that sort of a progression. What, realistically speaking, what should Liverpool's expectations be in the WSL this season, and where do you see them finishing?
I think patience is going to be important with this one, because I'm not sure that it's going to work straight away. And I think it is really tricky, because I think with a manager like Gareth Taylor and the way he wants to play, I'd really like to see more investment into the type of the players that they could bring in this last week. You can't expect to be mixing it with the Chelseas and the Arsenals, but Chelsea already have a squad that's won the treble, and they're out trying to buy Alyssa Thompson. I'm just reading that she's and they're trying to complete that deal before the end of the window. And it's very hard to compete with that. I mean, even on a lower level, you're looking across at teams like London City Lionesses, who are buying all these exciting players, and as a Liverpool fan, you'd be kind of scratching your head thinking, why can't we buy those players? I think what I'd say the realistic expectations is to kind of, if Liverpool can get that style of play down, start getting a few good results, start seeing that identity and that style of play, then I think this can be quite a positive season for Liverpool, even as a transitionary one, because obviously last doesn't get relegated. They go into a playoff against third in the Championship. So there's a little bit less at stake as well this season. I think it's going to be a season of transition. Um, but if they stick with it and they can kind of get used to Gareth Taylor's style of play, I kind of anticipate the season hopefully getting better and better for them as it goes on. Obviously, FA Cup semi-final last time out, it'd be good to try and expect the same or even try and with a manager like Taylor, like you said, instant impact in the FA Cup. If you could get to a final, that would be something.
Definitely will be a lot of interesting things to watch when it comes to the Liverpool women's team who kick off the WSL season. As you mentioned, the Merseyside derby against Everton. One more preseason game, August 21st, against Birmingham City. Tom, I want to really thank you for your insight and for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Joel. It's been fun.